Good day, ma'am. I am Mr. Edson M. Cotoner from BS Crim 3. I'm here to recite all the handwriting characteristic. Number one is the rhyme line quality skill. Does the question writing have the skillful, rhythmic, free-flowing appearance?
A. Smooth free flowing. B. Shocky nervous wavering. C. Deliberate.
Number two. Regularities. Does the question writing have an awkward, unnatural, sloppy appearance?
A. The evidence of patching and or retouching. B. Evidence of foreign marks made by the writing instruments. C. Broken connecting strokes. D. Circle formations made up of separate strokes. E. Pen lifts and separations. F. Vertical strokes and slanted stroke combinations. G. Individualized irregulations.
3. Size and proportion. What is the height of the overall writing, the individual strokes, and the proportion to each other?
A. Height of overall writing. B. Height of the short letters in proportion of the tall letter. C. Evidence of diminishing strokes. D. Evidence of increasing strokes. E. Narrow in proportion to height. F. Evidence of balancing above and below the baseline. G. The D and T stem heights are in what proportion to other letters. H. All form.
Alignment to baseline. What alignment exists to a rolled or imaginary baseline? Straight edge or roller measurements should be made.
A. Straight baseline pattern. B. The letter strokes leave the baseline. C. The word strokes leave the baseline. D. Concave baseline. E. Convex baseline. F. Upward slant. G. Downward slant. H. Angling slants.
Number 7. Pen pressure or weight. What is the general weight of strokes in the writings in addition? What amount of pressure was used in making the strokes? Detailed measurements and examinations with a stereoscope with reflected and transmitted light should be made.
A. Light pressure. B. Heavy pressure.
Number 8. Placement of diaretrics. How are the T-bar screws, the A dots, dotted, and other punctuation marks applied?
A. T-bar light crossing off. B. T-bar heavy crossing. C. T-bar short in proportion to stem. D. T-bar long in proportion to stem. E. T-bar location on the stem. F. T-bar left of the stem. G. T-bar right of the stem. H. T-bar convex shaped. I. T-bar concave shape. J. T-bar fades. K. T-bar constant. I. T-bar increases becomes heavier. M. T-bar slants in relation to the baseline. N. T-bar forms a hook at the initial or terminal end. O. T-bar tied around the stem. P. T-bar uncrossed. Q. E dots light dotted. R. E dots I dots form heavy dot. Is I dots location above the stem. T. E dots left of stem. U. I dots right of the stem. V. E dots circle formation. W. E dots jab. X. E dots missing.
Number 9. Strokes formation. Does the question writing contain should needle-like strokes formation with shape flat strokes or a combination of any or all the strokes? An examination of common letters such as MS, the NS, the RS, the PS. These may reveal stroke formation shapes.
A. Needle shape. B. Wedge shape. C. Curved round shape. D. Flat square shape.
Number 10 is loop formations. How are the loop formations made and what are their relationship to other strokes in writing?
A. Long loop formation. B. Short loop formation. C. Broad loop formation. D. Narrow loop formation. A. Needle shape loops. F. Wedge shape loops. G. Rounded loops. H. Flat squared loops. I. Interspersed with another loop. J. Above baseline beginning strokes.
Number 11 is circle formation.
A. Open. B. Close. C. Broad. D. Narrow. E. Filed.
Number 12 is beginning and ending strokes.
A. Hooked. B. Flourished, embellished. C. Inflexible, straight up stroke. D. Flexible, curve up stroke. A. Location on the staff. F. Above the baseline location. G. Below baseline location. H. Simple direct downstroke. I. Long running stroke. G. Heavy stroke. K. Light stroke. J. Hooked. M. Flourish embellish. N. Abrupt ending. O. Inflexible baseline or below baseline ending. S. Faded. T. Heavy. U. Bloody. Different structures of letter design.
Number 1 is a examination of a small letter E.
A. Examine the oval of each letter and note carefully any points on the circumference where there are deviations from absolute dissymmetry, any bulbs, flats, angles, or tremor. B. Note the direction of major axis of each oval. C. Is each oval completely closed in its upper aspect, or is there a general tendency to leave any gap? D. Consider each oval as a clock face. Is the oval closed at 11, 12, or 1 o'clock? A. Is the closing stroke butted in the upper portion of the oval? It is carried a little higher, leaving any tip, or does the overlap make at minute X? If the stroke present to the start from the above the baseline from the line or from the below it. G. Is there an eyelet formed where the initial upstroke meets the oval? H. Is there an eyelet formed in the process present right bend aspects of the oval in downward direction? I. Is what point does the downward retracting the lip below or above the baseline? G. To what height is terminal upstroke carried and what?
Number 2, examination of letter B.
Is there an initial upstroke or a bird? If so, where does it commence in relation to the base? What angles does it meet with the letter? B. Are all loops symmetrical? C. Are there blind loops? D. Which side of the loops show maximum curvature? E. Is the staff straight or bowed? If it is the true symmetrical, examine position of lowest position true in relation of the baseline. If complex true, how high is carried? H is the final portion of the upstroke parallel with the staff, covering from it or curving inward towards it. I is their final spore, examine the direction. G is there an eyelet at the junction of the spore with 2.
Number 3, examination of letter C.
Is there an initial upstroke? Those initial upstroke can cross the downward portion of main curve of letter. Does the main curve start with a tick point or an eyelet? Is there an initial spiral? C. Note the position of the lowest portion of the main curve in relation to the baseline. D. Examine the terminal upstrokes. How high it is carried? At what angle does it finish?
Number 4, examination of letter D.
Thus does the shaft of upward travel enters a proportion of the curve, leaving a minute projection on its right. B. Are initial upstrokes present? Do they start above the baseline from the line or from the below it? C. Is there an eyelet formed where the initial upstroke meets the oval? D. Is the staff loop or slightly curved to the other side? A. Is the staff straight or slightly curved to the other side? F. At what point does the downward retouching line with the oval? Is there a terminal upstroke?
Number 5, the examination of letter E.
A. Examine the development of curves in loop. Note which side of loop is flatter. B. Note proportion of length of loop to width in instance of blind loop. C. At what point does initial upstroke commence? E. Note the height of intersection of loop above baseline. If note height of lowest part of through above baseline. G. Is there a terminal upstroke?
Number 6 is the examination of letter F.
Does the either loop show a tendency to become blind? B. Study upper loop as in the case of small b are all loops symmetrical. C. Is upper loop simplified to a bar? If so, in this simply downstroke. D. Is the upper portion of a pointed formation rounded or eyelid? E. Is the portion of loop formed in the clockwise direction? If are upper and lower loops alternate on opposite sides of the staff?
Number 7 is the examination of letter G.
A. Note proportion between overall height of oval and length of loop. B. Examine the oval of each letter and note carefully any points of the circumference where there is deviation from absolute. Consider each oval close at 11, 12, or o'clock. Are initial upstrokes present? If so, they start on above or below the baseline. When the letter occurs in the body of word, there's initial upstroke undercut the oval. Does the initial upstroke form an eyelid with upper aspect of oval? G. What point does the staff part from the oval? G. Examine the lower loop is the case of the small letter P.
Number 8 is the examination of letter H.
8. A. Is there an initial upstroke? If so, note the position of the starting upstroke straight curve. B. Examine the loop of small letter b. Examine for symmetry. C. Does the letter commence with an upstroke? Which loops round upon itself to form a large eyelid? D. Are upstroke and staff joined by a simple arched hook? E. Note the position of lower end of staff in relation to baseline. If examine the final stroke if present at the line curvature and angle with baseline. 8. Examine the symmetry of arc.
Number 9 is the examination of letter I.
A. Is there an initial upstroke? If so, examine the manner already prescribed. B. Is there a final stroke? If so, examine the usual way. C. Does the downstroke replace the initial upstroke, and if so, to what extent is there an eyelid formed at their junction? D. Examine the formation, location, and position of the eye dot.
Number 10 is the examination of letter J.
A. Is there an initial upstroke? If so, examine in the manner already prescribed. B. If there is final stroke, if so, examine also in the usual way. C. Determine the formation, location, and position of a dot. D. Examine the lower loop as for small letter G.
#11 is the examination of letter K.
A. Examine the initial upstroke loop and staff as for letter H. B. Examine the number of strokes and buckle knot. C. Examine the final stroke in the usual way.
Is the examination of letter L.
Follow the procedure laid down in the case of small letter E.
Number 13 is the examination of letter M.
A. Examine the initial upstrokes as to its length and starter point. Is there a terminal upstroke? If so, examine in the usual way. C. Examine relative heights of the three arches. D. Examine the first arc with the rounded, angular, etc. Examine lower points of the feet of the letter relation to the baseline.
15 is the examination of letter N.
A. Examine as in the case of small letter M.
Fifteen is the examination of letter O.
A. When the letter begins a word, is there an initial upstroke or a commencing horizontal stroke? B. Does the initial stroke form an eyelet with the oval? C. Is the base of an oval on, below, or above the baseline? D. At what point was the oval closed?
16 is the examination of letter P.
A. Examine initial upstrokes. If so, examine in usual way. B. Is there an eyelet at top of stop or any tendency thereto? C. Examine the lower projection as to length, bulge, and retrace. D. Examine the central body as to formation.
Number 17 is the examination of letter Q.
A. Examine upstroke if any and oval as laid down in small letter G. B. Examine the lower projection as to length, bulge, point of intersection. C. In the base of the lower projection, an angle or an arcade. D. Examine the final stroke the usual way.
Eighteen is the examination of letter R.
A. Examine the initial upstroke. If present, examine the usual way. B. Examine the formation height of the hump. C. Examine the final stroke.
Number 19 is the examination of letter S.
A. Examine the initial stroke, whether on or above or below the baseline. B. Is the initial straight or bow either way? C. Is the top of letter S a point, an eyelet, or an acute angle, or a simply curve? D. To what extent is the spiral elaborated?
Number 20 is the examination of letter T.
A. If an initial upstroke is present, examine its opposition of starting point, straightness or line, and angle or slope. B. Examine the rotation of the upstroke and downstroke. C. Examine the final stroke in the usual way. D. Examine the crossing as to the symmetry, length, and pin emphasis.
Number 21 is the examination of letter U.
A. Use the same procedure as laid down for small I. B. Note also any difference in comparative heights of 2 points.
Number 22 is the examination of letter Z.
A. Examine the initial arcade as in the case or small m. B. Examine throw or garlands as in the case of small a. C. Examine the final horizontal spar as in the case of small letter b.
And number 23 is the examination of W.
A. Examine the same for the small letter u. B. Note any difference in height of the 3 points. C. Do bases on both true or baseline. D. Are both two equal in width? A. Examine the final stroke.
Number 25 is the examination of letter Y.
A. Is the examine initial upstroke in the usual way. B. Examine the symmetry of true. Does the base lie on above or below the baseline? C. Examine the lower projection.
Number 26, the examination of letter Z.
A. Examine the formation, lower projection, lobe, etc.